Good evening and welcome to tonight's Kalamazoo City Commission meeting of October 26, 2020. Tonight's meeting is being streamed live on the city's Facebook page and also on the city's YouTube channel. You can listen on your phone tonight by calling area code 269-552-6425 and entering meeting ID number 959-9189-1056 when prompted. And you may also leave a 3-minute public comment for tonight's meeting by calling area code 269-226-6573. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Kalamazoo Mayor David Anderson.
Thank you so much, Deputy City Manager Chamberlain. I appreciate that. Welcome everyone to our public Zoom meeting of the Kalamazoo City Commission for Monday, October 26th. Just a reminder for everybody, is this is a meeting that was originally scheduled for a week ago on Monday, October 19th. And when there was some uncertainty about our capacity to continue this kind of public meeting, which has now been clarified. So that's why we're having the meeting tonight, and we will have another meeting now in 1 week as our first meeting in November. So first thing we will do here is call this meeting to order and ask Clerk Barling to do the roll call.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Here in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Commissioner Hess.
Here in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Commissioner Knott. Commissioner Pradle. Commissioner Urban.
Here in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Vice Mayor Griffin.
Here in Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Mayor Anderson.
David Anderson, present in Kalamazoo, Michigan. So just a little reminder, this sounds a little bit strange, but the new opportunity for us to continue these Zoom meetings requires that we let people know physically where we are in one of these Zoom meetings. So commissioners, there are 2 absent commissioners. Is there a motion to excuse them?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Cunningham,
Or
supported by Commissioner Urban. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The motion passes. The absent commissioners are excused. For our opening ceremony tonight, we have Mr. Bill Schumacher from Leadership Logos. Yes, sir.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Hope you're all well. Why don't we spend some time and pray for God to bless our meeting tonight. Heavenly Father, we just want to thank you for your presence. Thank you that you are King of Kings and Lord of Lords, and you have created all things for our enjoyment. We thank you, Father, for this meeting. We thank you for all these members of the Kalamazoo Commission. Father, I pray that you would give them wisdom, that you will bless them, give them clarity of mind as they make decisions. Lord, we pray that you will bless them and bless this meeting. May it be profitable. May it be pleasing to you, Father. Lord, we pray that you will cover any of our weaknesses, Father, our flaws. We don't see everything. We aren't like you. Pray, Father, that you would cover us and that you would guide us and lead us in the direction that is good for our people, good for the city of Kalamazoo, and good for our world. Lord, we pray for protection on all of us and all of the citizens of Kalamazoo. Pray for the protection from COVID, that you will heal those who are suffering with this disease, and pray that you will eradicate it, Father, quickly. And Lord, that you will keep us safe and our families from that. And Lord, we pray for any tension in the city, Father, and in our world, that you will make peace, Lord, that you will cover us and be with us and help us as we make our way through these difficulties, Lord, and may there be unity and may there be peace. You are the God of peace, and we thank you for that. Thank you that you made peace through the blood of your Son, Jesus. Pray that you would help us as we go along in our world, in this world, that we'll be mindful of you and what you've done for us. Again, pray, Father, for your wisdom and the wisdom of this group tonight as they make decisions. And we thank you and we praise you in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
sharing your time with us tonight. I appreciate
welcome.
that.
You're welcome.
So there are two proclamations on tonight's agenda. The first one is Lights On After School Day. And I believe that we have somebody here. Yeah, I think Meg is here from KidNet. And I've asked Vice Mayor Patrice Griffin to read it.
Oh, Lights On After School Day Kalamazoo, October 22nd through the 24th, 2020. Whereas the citizens of Kalamazoo stand firmly committed to quality after-school programs and opportunities because they provide safe, challenging, and engaging learning experiences that help children develop social, emotional, physical, and academic skills, support working families by ensuring their children are safe and productive after the regular school day ends, build stronger communities by involving students, parents, business leaders, and adult volunteers in the lives of young people, thereby promoting positive relationships among youth, families, and adults, engage families, schools, and community partners in advancing the welfare of our children. And whereas Kalamazoo Youth Development Network, or KidNet, and City of Kalamazoo Department of Parks and Recreation have provided significant leadership in the area of community involvement in the education and well-being of our youth, grounded in the principle that quality after-school programs are key to helping our children become successful adults. And whereas Lights On After School, the national celebration of after-school programs held this year on October 22nd through 24th, promotes the importance of quality after-school programs in the lives of children, families, and communities. And whereas more than 28 million children in the United States have parents who work outside the home, and 19.4 million children have no place to go after school, and whereas many after-school programs across the country are facing funding shortfalls so severe that they are being forced to close their doors and turn off their lights. And whereas the City of Kalamazoo is committed to investing in the health and safety of all young people by providing expanding learning opportunities that will help close the achievement gap and prepare young people to compete in the global economy. Now, therefore, on behalf of the 53rd City Commission, on behalf of Mayor Anderson of the City of Kalamazoo, I proclaim October 22nd through 24th as Lights On After School Day in the City of Kalamazoo, and encourage our community to engage in innovative after-school programs and activities that ensure the lights stay on and the doors stay open for all children after school.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor. Ms. Blinkwitz, do you have any comments?
Yes, thank you, commissioners, for recognizing the importance. This year, again, you have, I believe, the past 6 years recognized the importance of keeping the lights on after school through a proclamation. This year was our first attempt at a virtual run walk. And on Thursday, we started at a park and rec site, and we talked to young people about the importance of the out of school time sector. And they passed the baton to virtually and literally to young people who were at the Boys and Girls Club. I was the carrier of the baton. I hopped in my car while we were still live streaming, brought the baton over to elementary age youth at the Boys and Girls Club, who proceeded to run around the track at Lake Street Boys and Girls Club with the baton, and they then passed it to teenagers. And we had, I think, 10 other organizations who participated virtually. So while we were in this time of COVID and we couldn't be in person for the run walk, I think Thursday's event was a big success. And this was our first attempt at a fundraiser through this event, and the funds raised will support the 11 community learning hubs that are now up and running. We have more hubs coming online every day and more community organizations that want to support the learning hubs. And so I want to say thank you for your support of those learning hubs and support of the out of school time sector. Now more than ever, when all learning is taking place out of school, our work is even more important, and we really appreciate your support.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here tonight, and thanks for all your great work. All of us really appreciate it. Makes a big difference. Thank you. Our next proclamation will be read by Commissioner Gene Hess. I believe our very own Director of Public Services, Jim Baker, is here to accept that. Is that correct? There you are. Commissioner Hess.
Thank you. As the commission member to the Environmental Concerns Committee, it gives me great pleasure to present this proclamation, Imagine a Day Without Water Day of Kalamazoo, October 21st, 2020. Recognizing the annual National Day of Advocacy, Imagine a Day Without Water, being held on October 21st, 2020, which is an organized effort to educate the public about why water as an essential, invaluable resource, highlighting the critical importance of access to reliable, clean water and the need for water infrastructure investments necessary to maintain and rebuild these vital systems. Whereas the infrastructure that brings the greater Kalamazoo area residents an average of 80 gallons of water per person per day, and then safely returns water to the environment, is essential to the quality of life, environment, and economic vitality of the city of Kalamazoo. And whereas a day without water would be a public health and safety crisis due to the impacts which would limit the abilities of safety personnel such as firefighters and hospital staff to do their jobs, as well as businesses and homes to function. And whereas water infrastructure is critical in protecting public health during the coronavirus pandemic, and whereas America's water infrastructure is aging and failing, and there are communities that have never had access to infrastructure in the first place. And whereas our water infrastructure is necessary to a thriving economy and public health protection, but is facing unprecedented challenges. And whereas America's economy is facing a recession, and whereas valuing and investing in water systems provides a path to economic recovery. Now, therefore, on behalf of the 53rd City Commission, David F. Anderson, Mayor of the City of Kalamazoo, do hereby recognize water is essential to the quality of life and economic competitiveness, and acknowledge the importance of educating the public about the value of water through Imagine a Day Without Water campaign. The City of Kalamazoo is dedicated to investing in safe and reliable water and wastewater infrastructure, and call on our federal partners to bring much needed funding and innovation to protect and restore our critical water infrastructure.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Director Baker.
Thank you, Your Honor, City Commission. I'd like to thank everybody for this proclamation. For most people, it's hard to imagine a day without water, but without the dedicated people to operate and maintain the water system and the commitment from our community to invest in this critical infrastructure, we couldn't deliver clean, safe drinking water to the more than 190,000 customers that rely on it. We hope that by imagining what our lives would be like without such reliable access to water, we can increase awareness about the importance of investing in our public water system. By the time water reaches our homes and businesses, it's traveled from its source underground through wells, pumping stations, treatment facilities, storage tanks, and miles of water main, in addition to the many other components needed to deliver water to residents within our system. In addition to the dedicated staff to operate the system 24/7, 365 days a year, investment in this infrastructure is absolutely critical to ensure that we can always rely on our system and have the water ready for countless things that it's used for every day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Director Baker, and thanks for being here for that. I know that all of us really appreciate your exemplary efforts and your entire team, unsung heroes at the City of Kalamazoo, taking care of water and wastewater here, foundationally important things for all of us. So thank you so much for that. Next thing on our agenda is the adoption of the formal agenda. Now, I am not certain, Attorney Robinson, whether this is going to take a couple motions. I know that my notes say that that you've recommended that amendments to the City Commission rules regarding electronic meetings be adopted early in this meeting. And currently those amendments are on our agenda under new business, which is L. So do we need a motion to actually move the new business section up to be the very next session in our meeting? Or is that something we can just go ahead and do?
Parliamentary wise, the proper thing would be to make the amendment to change the order of business. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much, Attorney Robinson. Yes, Commissioner Hess.
I move that we move item L, new business, to following item D, communications.
Thanks so much, Commissioner Hess. Is there support? Commissioner Urban. Any discussion? Clerk Barling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes,
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
thank you. The motion passes. Now that we have moved new business to our very next item, City Manager, do you want to talk a little bit about what this item is then? The resolution.
Why don't I go ahead and read the resolution, and then I think Attorney Robinson can speak to the matter.
Okay,
So item L1 is adoption of a resolution amending the City Commission rules to govern electronically held meetings to take advantage of and conform with the recently adopted Public Act 228 of 2020.
thank you so much. Attorney Robinson, any comments you'd like to make on this?
I'll attempt to be brief. Given the fact that the Michigan Supreme Court ruled earlier this month that the actions taken by the governor, at least in regard to the executive orders touching on changes to the Open Meetings Act, were under a legal cloud, that she had no power under one statute after a particular date. I think it was March 30th. And then they declared another act unconstitutional. So that left public bodies throughout the state in a legal gray area in terms of what the actions that were taken in good faith since the beginning of the COVID crisis. Were they legal? Could ordinances and other matters that were approved be challenged? And so to its credit, the legislature acted quickly and did several things. They gave us a safe harbor that any actions taken from the beginning of the COVID crisis through the end of the year are going to be okay if you met remotely. And secondly, they changed some of the rules in terms of what you have to do when you do meet remotely, hence the need for this change here. We'd already made the changes as a body back late March to change our order of business and do some other things to accommodate remote meetings. Much of that remains the same, but there are a few small changes that were imposed by the legislature. And one of the things we saw, and it was remarked on earlier this evening, was the fact that if you are a member of a public body attending remotely, you have to disclose your location by where you're joining the meeting. There's a couple of other small matters, but they are not particularly substantive, that we'll have to go and deal with as we go forward in terms of when you can be absent after the first of the year. But for now, we're good until end of 2020 with the adoption of this motion.
Thank you, Attorney Robinson. Do I have a motion to adopt this resolution?
So move.
Motion made by Commissioner Hess, supported by Commissioner Urban. Any discussion? Clerk Barling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The motion passes. Next item is communications. City Manager Ritzma.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. I would like to introduce our Public Safety Chief, Vernon Coakley, and he's going to provide an update on public safety's plans surrounding the elections coming up next Tuesday. So I'm going to turn it over to Chief Coakley.
Thank you.
Welcome, Chief.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Anderson, Vice Mayor Patrice Griffin, commissioners, distinguished guests, community. I'd like to give a brief overview of our operational plan for the election on November 3rd. So at the Kalamazoo Department of Public Safety, our top priority is keeping our residents and visitors and businesses safe. And that includes keeping people safe while they are doing their civic duty and exercising their right to vote on November 3rd. I am here today to share some details of our plan to help ensure all Kalamazoo residents and voters can cast their ballots in a safe environment that is free from threats, intimidation, or fear. Before I get into specifics, I want to make it clear that every vote in Kalamazoo will be counted. Voter interference or intimidation at polling places will not be tolerated. We understand this year's election is more politically charged, but that will not deter us from our mission to help ensure everyone in Kalamazoo can exercise their right to vote. We have been working closely with the city clerk, election officials, to make sure election day goes as smoothly as possible and that every vote is counted. We support the work of our election workers. We will not be static at polling stations or places. We will be proactive in responding to problems as soon as they are reported. Every KDPS officer assigned to respond to election day issues will have a working body camera affixed to their uniform and shall comply with KDPS policy 424. To ensure reports are made in a timely manner, we will be working closely with election officials at precincts across the city who report the issues. If a situation escalates beyond our staffing capability, we will call upon our partners to assist. We've coordinated with the city attorney's office, the city clerk, to ensure all election laws are complied with and all voter protections are enforced. And we have also been in communication with all major cities in West Michigan to develop a regional operational plan and learn what steps other cities and other police departments are taking to ensure people can exercise their right to vote. Community. Remember, you can vote early at the city clerk's office to avoid the November 3rd rush. Everyone, please exercise your right to vote on November 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chief Coakley. Appreciate all your good work on that. Any other communications, Manager Ritzma?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Well, thank you very much. Next on our agenda is public hearings. It's item E. And I'd like to open a public hearing for the first item under public hearings to receive comments on the approval of the 2019 Kalamazoo Mall Sidewalk Maintenance Assessment at a per front foot cost of $15.753. Is there a staff presentation on this item, Manager Ritzma?
No, there isn't, Your Honor, but we have staff available if there are questions.
Okay, thank you. Deputy City Manager Chamberlain, are there any public comments on this item?
No, there's not. No public comments.
Thank you, DCM Chamberlain. Seeing no public comments, I would now like to close the public hearing. Commissioners, the recommended action is a motion to adopt the resolution. Is there a motion?
I
So
move
moved.
that.
All right, got my standbys there. Motion made by Commissioner Urban, supported by Commissioner Hess. Any discussion? Seeing none, Clerk Barling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The motion passes. The resolution is adopted. Next is item E2. I would now like to open a public hearing to receive comments on an ordinance to temporarily remove the required minimum off-street parking requirements of section 507.2, required vehicular off-street parking spaces through March 31st of 2021 to allow existing parking areas to be used as outdoor sales, dining, and gathering in the wake of COVID-19. Manager Ritzman, is there a staff presentation on this item?
No, there isn't, Your Honor.
Thank you, City Manager. Deputy City Manager Jeff Chamberlain, are there any comments on this item? Public comments?
There are no public comments on this item, sir.
All right, thank you so much. So now I will be closing the public hearing. Commissioners, the recommended action is to adopt the ordinance. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Cunningham,
Support.
supported by Commissioner Hess. Any discussion? I'll just make one comment. I appreciate these efforts have been in place for a while here in order to provide more flexibility for businesses, and I appreciate all staff's efforts on that. Clerk Barling, will you please call the roll?
Sorry. Vice Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The ordinance is adopted. So next is item E3. I would now like to open a public hearing to receive comments on a resolution approving a request from Zoetis LLC for a PA 198 Industrial Facilities Tax Exemption Certificate for 12 years for real property valued at $47,859,166. City Manager Ritzma, is there a presentation on this item?
No, there isn't, Your Honor, but staff's available if there are any questions.
Appreciate that. There was some discussion on this item when we set this hearing, which was at a previous meeting. Deputy City Manager Jeff Chamberlain, are there any public comments on this item?
No, there are not.
Thank you again, DCM Chamberlain. So seeing none, I'd like to close the public hearing. Commissioners, the recommended action is a motion to adopt the resolution. Is there a motion?
I move that.
Motion made by Commissioner Urban,
Support.
supported by Commissioner Hess. Is there further discussion, Commissioners? Seeing none, Clerk Barling, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Thank you so much. The resolution is adopted. Next is an opportunity for general public comments. How we do that with this form of meeting is that people can call in and leave voice mails, and those are then moderated by Deputy City Manager Jeff Chamberlain. So it's to you now. This is our opportunity for public comments. DCM Chamberlain.
Thank you, sir. We do have some public comments that have come in under the regular agenda items per your rules for virtual meetings, as well as some general public comments under miscellaneous items. So we will play those for you right now. Thank you.
My name is David Rose. I am a citizen of Kalamazoo. I'm calling to comment on the new form-based code for downtown Kalamazoo. I'm seriously expressing my desire that the city maintain a 4-story height limit for the Bronson Park District as part of that new code. I think it would be a shame for the small park that the city of Kalamazoo has downtown to be surrounded by high-rise buildings of various sorts. It's important that Kalamazoo's Bronson Park, which has for millennia been a place of public gathering and community activities, be open to the sky, and that its trees, which formed its original canopy, be able to have the light of the day. Nighttime skies and daylight are important for the city of Kalamazoo's Bronson Park, and I strongly urge the city not to allow it to be surrounded by high-rise buildings. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Pam O'Connor, and I live in the city of Kalamazoo. I'm a fan of form-based code and calling to address the proposed code before you tonight for downtown. I was a member of the working group tasked with helping to formulate it and appreciate the effort of the city planner, Christina Anderson, made to bring many, sometimes challenging elements together. That said, I have a single strong concern. It's height. Under our current zone, there is no height limit downtown. However, there is currently a downtown design review process that does address height and standards that must be met. It reads in part as follows, and please pay attention to the last sentence. Quote, "This area is not subject to a maximum height limit. Area 1 is bounded by Kalamazoo Avenue, Lovell Street, Pitcher Street, and Park Street. Buildings and lots directly facing Bronson Park are excluded," end quote. The manual also identifies all historically significant buildings in downtown and notes that while detached building forms, like those in the Bronson Park District, are not predominant, they are found in this district. When our code planning began, I talked about the Bronson Park Historic District, wanting to be sure everyone was aware of it and the need to address it in the new code. I was assured that major parts of the design review process would be moved over to the new code, but nothing is there. The area where Bronson Park District is located has no maximum height limit. There are reasons the Bronson Park District was excluded from the limited height standard in the design review process. It is an important place with a well-established form context. There is not enough time tonight to share the reasons why a height limit that maintains that form is important, but we have assembled 6 Imagine Kalamazoo 2025 based rationale in support of putting one there. I have already shared them with several commissioners and will forward them to all of you via your city email addresses. There are other measures the city can undertake that will further conservation of this district, and I encourage their pursuit. However, the new form-based code is the place to begin action on an item that addresses form. Please carefully consider this request and act to amend the proposed code.
Well, my name is Quentin Slavacek. I live within the city. I am the church moderator at First Baptist Church of Kalamazoo. I am calling in support of the 4-story height limit on the Bronson Park District. is extremely important to preserve the character and the life of downtown and not bring in skyscrapers that crowd the city out and distract from the culture and character of the historic districts and the historic areas of downtown. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Debbie Fryman, and I live in Portage. I'm not within the city limits, but I do have neighbors, friends, and close ties in Kalamazoo. I'm a volunteer with the Kalamazoo chapter of Citizens Climate Lobby. I'm an active member of the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition and one of the leaders of Schools for Climate Action of Michigan. Our Kalamazoo youth are calling on leadership with their own resolutions to prioritize action on climate change. I want to thank you for your leadership in adopting the resolution to declare a climate emergency last September. That document detailed the climate impacts in Southwest Michigan in a pre-COVID world really well, but our issues have become more pressing. Today, there's Hurricane Zeta heading for our country's Gulf Coast, and the Silverado fire in Southern California doubled to 4,000 acres in just a matter of hours. These kind of things are making us see the urgency of climate action. And while there's not evidence that there's a direct effect from climate change in influencing the spread of COVID-19, the National Center for Biotechnology Information has found that particulate matter in our air helps coronavirus to bind to receptors in our lungs. Particulate matter is worse in certain areas of our cities and can be reduced with leadership. I'm especially vulnerable to particulate matter myself and have to come indoors on days when it gets bad, and the smoke from the fires in California have sometimes affected my breathing. Other things like just days when there's a lot of traffic, it affects my breathing. But our climate goals can be reached with action, and there are so many solutions to create a better future for our citizens. So please make it your priority to do everything that you can to implement the Climate Action Plan as soon as possible. Thank you for your time. Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the commission. My name is Jerry Griffin, President of GMG Public Affairs Consulting. Calling regarding item 1 on the regular agenda, and I'm hoping that the City Commission would consider discussion tonight as it talks about the rezoning of downtown and the uses in downtown, an issue related to the 500-foot buffer from Arcadia Festival Place as it relates to marijuana facilities. The 500-foot buffer from that location would eliminate most of the truly viable buildings in the downtown area where these facilities would seem the most appropriate as you're looking at as an appropriate use for that area. The plaza seems more designed for events and festivals, and I know they're used for that purpose. And I'm also aware that alcohol is actually served in Arcadia Festival Place during some of those events, even though the playground is there. Now, I certainly understand the desire of the city to keep young children away from marijuana facilities. That being said, it does not appear from the design or the walking through the Arcadia Festival grounds that it is at all an attraction for children. The playground equipment contained therein seems somewhat ancillary, and based on some of the discussions with neighboring business owners, there is very little use by small children, if any at all. Also, it does not appear there's any significant single-family residential property in the area that be appealing to young families. As I said, most of the viable commercial area in downtown, particularly Michigan Avenue, for instance, is not even visible from the park, unlike maybe some of the other areas of the city where there are other public playgrounds and first one-story commercial buildings where maybe some marijuana facilities might locate, where they're visible from those parks. There's just a natural buffer from Arcadia Place to most of the downtown due to the tall buildings and busy streets. So these locations wouldn't be at all visible or accessible from Arcadia Place. And I am aware that the city has undertaken a study to redesign Arcadia Festival Place that has been put on hold by the pandemic. It was my understanding the desired outcome was to find a better and greater use for that space. In light of this and the other points that I've stated, I'm hoping that you would see that there doesn't seem to really be any need to have a buffer of any sort from the festival grounds. And I thank you for your time and consideration in this matter. I certainly hope that during your discussion tonight, this issue is at least, the merits of it or its fault in my arguments are discussed amongst council. Thanks for your time. Bye-bye.
Jeff Messer, city resident. I have three things to say. First, I'd like to point out to the public that the City Commission is choosing to disenfranchise its citizens by continuing to hold 100% virtual meetings. During the week of October 12, the Michigan legislature passed and Governor Whitmer signed amendments to the Open Meetings Act that permit but do not require public bodies to hold virtual meetings through December 2021 in communities that have declared a local state of emergency. Under current Michigan Department of Health orders, the City Commission could hold hybrid meetings in the City Commission chamber with approximately 22 people in attendance, plus 10 more in the community room and additional voters in the third floor conference room, lobby, and elsewhere. While I imagine most citizens don't want to attend meetings in person, some of us do. We are being denied the basic right of being able to talk to our elected representatives and city staff without intervening technology. We're also being denied the ability to see and interact with other citizens who are participating in the meetings. As I have done several times before, I am again asking the City Commission to move to hybrid meetings, just like the Portage City Council has been doing since July. Secondly, for those of you who have not yet voted, please vote for Andrew Argo for Kalamazoo Public Library Board of Trustees on the nonpartisan portion of your ballot. I believe Andy will be a good advocate for patrons, which is particularly needed during this time that the library administration has implemented unnecessary and counterproductive rules. These include the elimination of all printed periodicals, which deny current news and information to computer illiterate patrons, the closure of the transgender bath restrooms, and an enforced limit of 1 hour maximum in the building per day. To learn more about that last rule, search YouTube for the video titled Kalamazoo Public Library Board of Trustees Virtual Meeting of October 19, 2020. Again, please vote for Andrew Argo for Kalamazoo Public Library Board of Trustees on the nonpartisan portion of your ballot. Finally, I would like to remind the public that leaves ready for collection by the city should be placed on the curb lawn, not in the street. You violate City Ordinance Section 33(2) when you pile leaves in the street. Additionally, this behavior blocks parking space, litters the streets, and clogs storm drains, which causes streets to flood after rainfalls. It is also illegal to burn leaves within the city. If you discover someone burning leaves, please immediately call 4-888-911 and report an in-progress violation of City Ordinance Section 1541A.
I had called last week before I realized the meeting was postponed and would like to replace that comment with this one. Good evening. My name is Amber Adams Fall, and I am a current resident of Parchment, and I work in the city of Kalamazoo. I am calling again tonight to address the City Commission meeting on August 17th, in which Commissioner Knott made false claims about your constituent, Dennison, as well as engaging in harmful rhetoric that has continued to damage his personal and professional reputation and endanger the safety of himself and his family. You wrongfully stated that Mr. Dennison had made a call requesting the presence of armed protesters to his peaceful vigil in Arcadia Park. You referred to him as a race baiter, and you blamed the outcome of that day's events on Mr. Dennison rather than on you yourselves, the elected body of Kalamazoo, whose specific role is to serve and protect the human beings who reside here. I have now spent over 2 full months asking you to correct the record and issue an apology, and I will continue to do so for as long as necessary. It is an utter embarrassment that this has been allowed to stand for this length of time, and I can only interpret the silence of Commissioner Knott, Mayor Anderson, and the entirety of the City Commission as complicity. I do not expect any of you to be perfect. I do not expect that you will never make mistakes. What I do expect is that when you make a mistake or cause harm, intended or otherwise, that you be accountable for those mistakes and address or correct them swiftly with, as one might say, humility and grace. Anything other than that at this point makes it painfully clear that you stand by your willingness to perpetuate dishonesty and personal vendettas on the Commission, which is really not okay. I ask again, respectfully and specifically, that you issue a correction of the facts and apologize to Reverend Nathan Dannison and his family for the defamation of his character and the damage incurred to their personal safety and well-being. Mayor Anderson, I look forward to a response emailed from you, as I have now waited an additional 17 days since your last message. Thank you again for your time. Good evening.
My name is April Owaleen. I am a Kalamazoo City resident. I am calling regarding the zoning for height, floor levels, whatever the floor-level limit around the Bronson Park area, which is on the board agenda right now. Kalamazoo does not need any more sky rises. Each time you add a layer, you are taking away from the infrastructure. There is no longer any place for all of the water to go each time it rains. People are wondering why there's so much massive flooding. It's due to the amount of concrete and everything else that is going into the city. If we do not stop this now, Kalamazoo will no longer be. Please, before you approve this agenda, give it a second thought. Downtown Kalamazoo does not need to be the Chicago skyline. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, that was the last public comment for tonight. And I believe you're muted, sir.
There we go. Thank you so much, Deputy City Manager Chamberlain. I want to thank everyone who took time to call in and provide input for our meetings. That's much appreciated. Next on our agenda is the consent agenda. City Manager Ritzma.
We have 6 items this evening. First is the approval of a 2-year contract with Total Property Management for the mowing and trimming of parks and green spaces in the amount of $220,270.20. Next is the approval of a 1-year contract with Student Haulers for the removal and disposal of trash, nuisances, and garbage collected pursuant to the enforcement of various city ordinances in the amount of $120,000. Next is the adoption of a resolution setting a public hearing regarding an amendment to Kalamazoo Downtown Economic Growth Authority Development and Tax Increment Financing Plan. Next is the approval and acceptance of easements for water main to be installed as part of the 30th Street Water Main Project. Next is the approval of a snow melt system easement agreement with First National Bank that would allow the bank to install a new snow melt system in the city's right-of-way and maintain the system for 20 years' time. And finally, adoption of a resolution vacating Scudder Court between Frank and Parsons Streets. This item is being postponed until next Monday, November 2nd.
Thank you, City Manager Ritzma. Commissioners, the requested action is to approve items 1 through 5, postpone item 6 until November 2nd, and authorize the city manager to sign all documents on behalf of the city. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Cunningham, supported by Commissioner Hess. Motion's been made and supported. Clerk Barling, please call the roll.
Mayor Anderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham,
Yes.
Commissioner Hess,
Yes.
Commissioner Urban,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioners. The consent agenda items are approved. Next is our regular agenda. We have 3 items on the regular agenda. City Manager Ritzma.
Apologize for that. First reading of an ordinance to amend the text of Chapter 50 zoning code and update the zoning map for downtown and adjacent blocks and schedule a public hearing for November 2, 2020.
Thank you, Manager Ritzman. Is there a report on this item?
Yes, I have City Planner Christina Anderson here to give a overview of what's being requested or changed through this ordinance amendment.
Thank you.
I'm going to share my screen, so if you just give me a second. Does that come through?
Yep.
Wonderful. So thank you very much for reviewing this evening. This is a proposed update to the downtown zoning code and to the adjacent areas of downtown. It is both proposed to be a map change, meaning a rezoning, as well as a text amendment, so change to code standards. So before I begin, I think it's really important that we're all kind of on the same page as what is zoning and what for us, right? Zoning is a set of rules for how land can be used and developed, what land uses are allowed, how they're allowed, if there's any specific restrictions. Zoning talks about building location, including the location of driveways and parkings, and it can talk about building form, including height, entrance location, and windows, among others. Zoning is a power that's state, us meaning the city. It's intended to support the 2025 master plan. And really, it's the base layer or foundation for projects. And we are consciously, incrementally updating our code based on our 2025 master plan. So it's not the barrier, because it's that first step of a project. It's people still have to get through construction or financing, there's property purchasing, all those other details. We want to make sure that that base layer is right. And zoning is not a cure-all. It is not going to make a store come back that has since closed or is no longer there. What it does, it helps to define the area for what we'd like to see as things change in the future. So again, I mentioned this project has two parts. We're updating the zoning map using downtown districts 1, 2, and 3, as well as reviewing blocks that are directly adjacent to downtown to make sure that they're supportive of those urban land uses and urban form that you see in downtown. The second piece, again, are text amendments, and those focus on tweaking the downtown districts based on the public discussion we had this summer. If you recall, the downtown districts were actually created last winter initially. An update for the use table and standards associated with uses and definitions to support this work. So looking at the map first, it's a busy map, but you can see that very large area that's in red that is currently zoned as CCBD, Commercial Central Business District. It is one large district that governs everything. So whether you're on the mall, whether you're Cooley Street, you're Lovell, you're kind of all subject to the same standards. And that one size fits all approach does not necessarily work as we are looking at projects now. We also have some manufacturing that still exists in and around downtown that doesn't reflect existing uses. And when you look outside of that red area, we have districts that should support downtown, but limit mixed use, kind of promote a more suburban form, and don't align with a walkable active area of downtown. And so this is where we started. And through a mapping exercise with the community, we mapped the 3 new downtown districts over what was that red CCBD area. And so this is a map in front of you of downtown 1. So the downtown 1 district is meant to be that entertaining, dining, and shopping core. So this is your lots of storefronts on the first floor, looking into retail and dining spaces. Residential uses are moved upstairs or to the rear, so the storefront space is saved for an active use. You're not going to see surface parking lots in this area, and it's the smallest area in the center of our downtown because it is more restrictive as it allows those less active use along the front of a building. Downtown 2 surrounds that. So it's like the first layer around the donut hole. Downtown 2 is also a mix of uses, but it allows a little more flexibility on the first floor, including civic uses and residential institutional uses, mixed in with commercial and other storefront uses. You will see the buildings in Downtown 2, they won't all have a storefront. You'll start to see other types of facade development, but what you will always see is a front entrance and a minimum amount of windows and a setback outside of the civic buildings that is keeping in with the form of downtown. And then finally, transitioning from downtown to our neighborhoods, which here is in the map that's in front of you, is shown between the solid line and the outside kind of dash line, is Downtown 3. Again, meant to be a transition between downtown and our surrounding neighborhoods. Allows a wide variety of development, including housing opportunities, including those what we often refer to as missing, or some of those smaller housing types, things like row houses and low-rise apartments, would be allowed in this zone. Again, the buildings are going to start to look a little bit different as we start to transition from downtown to neighborhood, but again, keeping that urban form all the way through, where the building entrance is, where the transparency is, and parking in the back, access off the side, to maintain that active urban form. And that we looked beyond that giant red central commercial business district to look at the surrounding blocks. And in reviewing those, we really took that community commercial district that exists, commercial neighborhood district, commercial office district that limit mix of uses, limit residential on the ground floor, and replace those, or proposing to replace those with Live Work 1 and Live Work 2. Which are flexible districts that allow a mix of uses, much like what exists there today, and making sure that that is something that can continue to develop. And then a couple of it's easy to miss, we added back kind of some residential core repair, some residential multifamily 36. We did this because in these locations, they're residential lots, they're used for residential purposes, and they're adjacent to RM36. So we're kind of repairing something where perhaps the commercial zoning may have been pulled a little bit too far at a previous code update. And so that represents the map changes. And that's really when we engage the community, that's what we spent the first half of the engagement activities on. But when you're developing a property, the first thing you want to know is what district you are, but then you move to, well, what are my uses that are allowed? How are they allowed? And what are the building standards? And so I want to touch base on some of the items that we have updated in the text. So the first is uses. Overall, the existing uses in the CCBD district and in the downtown districts are very similar. They all allow a really wide mix of uses that you would expect in a downtown. The big difference between how we regulate uses now and how we're proposing to regulate uses is that we're able to divide it up by districts again. So, edge of downtown is treated differently than the mall. We also have the ability in our new code to look at not just uses by district, but things like the street type that it's on. This is not new for us. We've used street type before to help regulate uses, and also regulate uses by floor. And so why do we get to this level, floor of a building? These are tools, best practice tools that other downtown areas use to help support active core set of blocks while allowing more flexible uses in the balance of the downtown. And really the goal is to support that active retail area, to have a consistent, cohesive block of use after use after use down the street to kind of pull that shopper or pull that person looking for entertainment down a block. And so I'm not going to, certainly don't need to highlight the entire use table, but what I wanted to talk about were 3 uses that are different in the proposed code compared to the existing code. The first is residential. So right now in the central business district, residential is permitted throughout the whole central business district and on any floor.
So you could have a ground floor residential use anywhere in downtown. And, you know, a residential use is not as active as a storefront. It can kind of in the flow of things. And so in downtown one, which again is that active center of town, core retail area, we've allowed residential, but when it's on upper floors or when it's in the rear of the building. And in downtown 2 and 3, it's permitted throughout. So, you know, this new way of this new set of standards allows to calibrate things just a little more finely. Same with a religious assembly, not permitted in downtown 1, but permitted in downtown 2 and 3, where it is predominantly found. And parking lots, meaning standalone parking lots, no other use on the lot, which are permitted throughout the central business district now, would not be permitted, parking lots would not be permitted in downtown 1, and would be permitted in downtown 2 and 3, but not on corner lots, because that really defines the block, and also not when they front a priority street, which are streets like Michigan Avenue, the first block of Portage, and Kalamazoo Mall at Burdick Street. So really being more thoughtful about where they're located. The biggest change has to do with marijuana uses. And so if you recall last spring, when this body reviewed the adult use marijuana rules, it was decided to, at the Plan Commission's recommendation, to pause on adding any marijuana businesses into downtown and save that discussion for this project. And so here are the results of that discussion. As you know, there are multiple marijuana business types. We looked at 3 for the downtown. So the first is a retailer or provisioning center. Remember, they're called 2 different things if it's recreational or adult use versus medical. And so they are permitted in all 3 downtown districts. However, they're still subject to all the requirements found in our code. So each must be 1,000 feet from each other, and the separation distances from protected uses like schools, playgrounds, and daycares are still in place. And there are some additional limitations based on street type, just like we did last spring when it occurred in our neighborhoods. Designated consumption establishment is the second marijuana business proposed for downtown. It is also permitted in all 3 districts. Consumption must occur indoors. It has limitations in its location based on street type and of course those protected uses again. I want to pause and say that the Plan Commission discussed this use a lot in their public hearing. And there was some number of commissioners who were unsure if they wanted to recommend this use to this body for inclusion. And so it garnered a lot of conversation. And part of that was, you know, I think the root of that conversation was, this is a new business. We don't know that much about it. I don't think there has been one yet that's been licensed. It's one of the new marijuana business types. You know, we just don't know much about it. Do we want to necessarily go forward knowing that there could be consequences that we don't know about yet, unintended land use consequences? At the end of the discussion, there was not enough support amongst the plan commissioners to it be removed from the draft that you are seeing, so it remains in, but I wanted to make sure that you all were aware of that discussion. Finally, safety compliance or laboratory, very similar to a medical laboratory use for testing of marijuana products, is permitted only in downtown 2 and 3 and has some limitations based on street type. So I think marijuana uses are kind of our biggest use change because everything is new. Very quickly to kind of wrap this up, the other piece of this is standards, right? So this is a form-based code. We've heard a few comments tonight about it being a form-based code, which regulates things kind of at a more of a fine-grained level and more than just building envelope, which would be like, you know, here's your setbacks, here's your basic height. It goes into details like entrance location, transparency, which is the ratio of windows to walls of a building when they face a street. More details relates to the the relationship between the building and the street and the building and its parts, what a form-based code includes. These are not new standards. They exist in our downtown design review standards now. We're moving them from guidelines to code. And these have been tweaked a bit, but I want to focus mostly on height because that's what we heard our public comment on this evening. So I wanted to make sure we talk about it. And it was a big topic of discussion, particularly with our working group. Ms. O'Connor read it for us. Height, the gray area, that gray box that pops up on your screen is the current area of no maximum height in the zoning code. And it's mirrored in the downtown design review guidelines, with the exception, as was read, that around Bronson Park, what's around Bronson Park applies to the second set of rules, which is everything outside of that gray box can be 2 stories taller than the nearest building within 200 feet. So, if you're down by Skyrise, obviously you have very generous height allowances. If you're over by Cooley or Water, as hits West Edge, you're not going to have a very generous height allowance because there's a lot of vacant parking lots over there. So there's no height to build off of. As it relates to Bronson Park, is 9 stories right now across Rose Street. And so any buildings within 200 feet that front Bronson Park could be 11 stories right now. And then Miller Canfield is 6 stories. So anything that's within 200 feet of that building would be up to 8 stories. So that's the way it exists today. We discussed this a lot. First of all, the Plan Commission did make a recommendation to this body to ensure that all new buildings in downtown, 1, 2, or 3, must be a minimum of 2 stories. This is a continuation of what exists in our code today. As it relates to the opposite end of the spectrum, the maximum height, originally it was tied solely to our street types, which again is something that we have been doing in our code. And so the initial discussion was what's marked on this map represents our priority streets. And so any lot that fronts a priority street could have no maximum height. The concern with this is, or the concern that came out from the discussion with this is that it was a significant reduction of potential density in downtown. That area of no max height hits some of the places where we have historic buildings, and there was some concern that that may cause some tear downs to allow a higher building height. The desire to, at a minimum, stay where we are, if not expand it. And so those were the issues with keeping it just priority streets. So we looked to our next most intensive street type, which is Main Street. And then we had any lot that faces one of the yellow highlighted streets would be no maximum height. And that's fine. That's very consistent, again, with what we've done. What we found is that there were a small handful of lots that didn't happen to front one of these yellow streets, but were either surrounded by or adjacent on multiple sides to lots that allowed no max height. And so, we had to make a decision. Okay, do we just handle those through a variance process when they come up, or do we round out the area to include those lots, which is what we ended up doing. And it ended up being, at the end of the day, everything within that dashed line, which is all of downtown 1 and 2. And again, it's very similar to the priority streets and Main Streets, just we've picked up those handful of lots that were kind of the exceptions. Now, we heard some tonight on Bronson and allowing no, the concern with allowing a no max height on Bronson, with a suggestion that we shift it to 4 stories. I will put forth that 4 stories is a little conservative. We have buildings that are across the street. I've already mentioned 6 and 9 stories. The courthouse, is 4.5 or 5 stories, depending on what front you're looking at, whether you're Rose or Academy. I think that if the concern is blocking light or creating kind of a tunnel effect, I think we can come up with a thoughtful a thoughtful study and process to kind of better manage and better calibrate the height. You know, the other concern is that I have with just setting a blank height of 4 is that several of the lots that face Bronson also face other streets, like Michigan Avenue, you know, that we all, you know, an agreement is an intense street and could warrant more height. You know, so how do we reconcile those two things? And so again, what I would propose for today is, and I've already had some conversations with some of our Historic Preservation Commission folks, is that if we as a city are concerned about light and impact on Bronson Park, you know, there are a few other tools that we can consider and we can study that would either impact the zoning code in the future or could impact some other process to manage that issue. And those things are things like, you know, doing that study and adjusting the code at a future time. We can restart the conversation about historic districts if that is something that is of interest to HPC and the properties that exist around. You know, there are other tools to kind of get at this very unique small area. But I feel like just using the zoning code just to say 4 in this area is a little bit blunt, and we're not quite getting some of the nuances that we would get elsewhere. So that is that's what I am proposing we do to manage and discuss this issue further. We also have other tools that we're looking into with the Historic Preservation Commission, also as other options to see what works best to manage all the issues for the area. So that is what I have for you. Again, text amendments, and then the mapping of downtown is the focus of the project. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you very much. That was a great presentation. Director Anderson, I appreciate that. Are there questions for staff at this time from Commission? Commissioner Urban.
Oh, go ahead.
I heard from one of the constituents during the public comments portion of the meeting that that person seemed to have some concern about whether the form-based design guidelines were actually going to be transferred into the zoning code for this downtown area. It seems to me that it looks to me like they are being incorporated. So could you clarify that for me?
I think that the form-based elements are incorporated. I think what the caller was specifically pointing out was an additional review step that exists in downtown design review that does not exist in the zoning code. And the reason why that doesn't exist in the zoning code is that when you have design guidelines, like they're guidelines, right? And so you go to you do your plan, you go to a board who will review to make sure you've met the guidelines and, you know, has the authority to put the guidelines a little bit one way or another. Those are guidelines. When it's in the code, you don't have that flexibility. It's in the code, it's required. And so that I believe that was what the caller was differentiating. We have gone through downtown design review, the document itself, and pulled out, you know, all the pieces that we incorporated over. There are still some things that remain in downtown design review that will have to remain until we update the code in a new way, you know, to cover these sections, like signage and lighting. There's also a section in downtown design review that talks about streetscape. You know, we are about to do a street design rule. We're going to be putting out an RFP for a consultant that will provide those set of standards. And once that project is done, those things can come out of downtown design review. And so we've really tried to think about how we deal with the pieces in downtown design review as we update the code and they go in other places.
That helps. Thanks.
Other questions for Planner Anderson? Commissioner Hess? Yeah.
Planner Anderson, thank you, and thanks to the Planning Commission for doing this work. It's a lot of heavy lifting and a lot of time and effort, and I appreciate that. If you could just adjust there was one caller asking about the 500-foot buffer in Arcadia Festival site.
Sure. So the caller is suggesting to this body that you reconsider the distance from protected uses as it relates to downtown. So right now there's a 500-foot protected buffer that exists around parks where marijuana businesses are not allowed. The caller is making the argument that 500 feet from Arcadia goes across Water Street, across that block, and out to Michigan Avenue. And Michigan Avenue is is a world away, is very different. It feels very far away from Arcadia Festival site, is the example that that the caller gave. And so that is the crux of this, of the gentleman's argument. The call, a similar statement was made at Plan Commission level as well. And they chose, at the time, they chose not to pick that item up.
Thank you.
Other questions for Planner Anderson? Commissioner Urban.
Yes, well then, in connection with the buffer around the Arcadia Festival Park, since that whole area is being reevaluated and perhaps redesigned, it seems like the buffer question isn't really going to be settled, or maybe shouldn't be settled until there's some clarity there. So it seems to me that issue that was raised by the constituent remains a live issue, even if we don't deal with it directly in a very specific kind of a blunt instrument kind of way this evening. Does that sound like a reasonable conclusion?
So I just want to make sure that I'm going to repeat, so make sure I understood what you had said. So you're right, Arcadia Festival site might change, right? There might be some development on it. We don't know where if there is development, it might be on water, it might be against Kalamazoo, in which case the distance from the park may no longer be an issue, right? Because it's the park, Arcadia has changed. Right, so this commission, has to consider that the Arcadia Festival site may look very different in the future, in which case the 500 foot from that, it might be moot. I think that caller is kind of saying, well, what about right now? And that is the crux of what you all would need to weigh. Is it something that you would want to adjust now or not? There are other parks in downtown, right? Bronson Park is another one that would have a 500-foot buffer around it. The library has a 500-foot buffer around it as it relates to medical marijuana uses. So there are other protected uses that need to be balanced. And as you know, when you're opening a marijuana business, it is a little bit of like a jigsaw puzzle, right? You have to get all the pieces. You have to understand all the protected uses, which land uses can change. So you need to make sure that you're up to date on those. You need to make sure that if you have a distance requirement between you and a similar business, you need to know where they are. My point is that it's complicated and a bit nuanced. So, changing a dial in one place may not necessarily have the desired impact unless you've looked at all of the other elements that go into this ordinance. It's very any other part of our zoning code. It is definitely a little more complicated.
Well,
is that good,
okay.
Commissioner Urban?
Yes.
Okay. Other questions for staff? Thank you. I just have a quick question, Planner Anderson. Wouldn't it be the case that we would be looking at changing other ordinances if we were talking about changing buffer zones? Because that was part and parcel of our work related to medical marijuana and recreational marijuana. Is that correct?
Well, all of the buffer requirements exist in the zoning code. So they would be changed here. What is in 20B or 22B, 20B, Clyde can correct me, more has to do with licensing and doesn't have those distance requirements. So if you're going to change it, actually the zoning code is the place that you would do it.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, commissioners, well, seeing none, the recommended action is a motion to offer this ordinance for first reading. That's what we're doing tonight, and schedule a public hearing. Is there a motion?
Moved.
Motion made by Commissioner Cunningham.
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Urban. Is there any discussion? I don't see any discussion. I just wanted to say thank you so much, Planner Anderson. I think that these zoning issues are not simple things to understand, and I appreciate the very clear way you put together your presentation. I think that's very helpful. So thanks for that. And I see a hand up, Commissioner Cunningham.
Thank you, Mayor, and I apologize for going out of order. I just wanted to kind of piggyback on what you said in regards to Ms. Anderson's work. It's been, I just want to highlight a frustration that I continuously run into is, as I've been serving, is typically we have a lot of reactive zoning. And I think this is, some of those proactive steps that we're trying to take. And it's always, a piece of it being that continuous community engagement. So we still have time between now and next time we have to vote on this information. So to the community at large, if there's other thoughts, ideas that you want to input or suggest, please take the time to do so. And once again, just thank you again for all of the work.
Thank you, Commissioner Cunningham. All right, no more discussion. As looks to be the case, Clerk Barling, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes. Thank you very much, commissioners. The motion passes. The next item is item H2, City Manager Ritzma.
Approval of a proposed settlement and release with Georgia Pacific and 3M Company, whereby the city will receive funds to pay for Cooper Township property connections to the City of Kalamazoo water system.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. Is there a report on this item?
I believe the city attorney has some comments.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. This is the recommendation of both myself and Public Services Director Baker that you approve this settlement. This has to do with the PFAS contamination of private wells in Cooper Township. And these folks needed to connect to a potable water supply. That's the City of Kalamazoo. And that's going to cost us some money to run out that would have to be otherwise either reflected in rates and or paid for by some type of grant funding through the state. In addition to that, because we just don't run lines out there, and Director Baker is more the technician and he can describe this more in detail, but when we're running lines, there has to be some looping. There should be, and that's good, just good practices. And there were some other improvements that we wanted to make in that area of the community. So in total, we had a substantial project, and we wanted to bring 3M and Georgia Pacific to the table to discuss whether or not they'd be willing to grant us or pay us some money in lieu of litigation in order to reduce the cost of that project for ratepayers. I will say this, that the attorney who represented the paper companies acknowledged that he wanted to play ball with us, if you will. There were meetings that we attended at the Cooper Township Hall. We also had some telephone conversations. There was a little bit of give and take, and obviously the paper companies wanted to, I don't want to say get out of it as cheaply as they could, but they recognized that there was some costs and risks in going forward, and they had an initial figure that they presented to us. we did some further internal discussion, and we also gave them an idea as what we expected the bids to come back at, and that was one of their real concerns, is that if they went with a percentage figure, they might get dinged harder than they really wanted to pay. At the end of the day, the bids came back very good. We were able to counter offer with the paper companies, and they agreed to the number we proposed, and it was not an acrimonious negotiation at all. It was rather refreshing, at least from my perspective, in dealing with a company, or companies in this case, that had a legitimate argument perhaps as to we weren't really in control of the paper companies when the pollution occurred. We subsequently acquired them, and we acquired both their assets and their liabilities, but nobody knew PFAS was not on the horizon. It was not a known detriment or liability when these paper companies were acquired. But they were willing to, I guess, come to the table, negotiate in good faith, and the settlement that is being presented to you tonight has been accepted by the Cooper Township Board. They did so at their meeting of 2 weeks ago, and it's my recommendation that this body also accept that settlement agreement with the 3M and Georgia Pacific paper companies. I don't know if Director Baker has any more to add.
Thank you, Attorney Robinson. Director Baker.
Thank you, Your Honor. As the city attorney stated, and this project reflects great credit upon the city of Kalamazoo, Cooper Township, and Georgia Pacific for that settlement. This is work that's been ongoing since 2018 and is in response to the PFAS contamination out in Cooper Township. The City Commission awarded this project on July 6th, and the bids came in very good. That work is underway now, and that project can be tracked with status updates. The City Kalamazoo website, if you go into projects, and then Cooper Township Water Main Extension. In total, our engineers estimated this work to be about $10.5 million. The bids came in at about $8.1 million, and then this $5.4 million settlement further offsets that project cost. So effectively, we have a project with about $10.5 million in value that we're able to install and put in the ground for about $2.7 million. So that is an excellent example of intergovernmental cooperation between the city and Cooper Township, as well as all the partners in the community that made this project possible.
Thank you, Director Baker. Commissioners, do you have any questions for Attorney Robinson or Director Baker at this time? All right, so I just have a comment related to that. I just want to appreciate all your efforts on this, and I also appreciate Director Baker, I would almost call it heroic work of you and your team when you went out and connected Parchment, and now are involved in Cooper Township in terms of making sure that all our neighbors have access to clean, safe drinking water. So thank you for your work. Please let your team know that we are very, very appreciative of that. So thank you again. So seeing no more discussion, the recommended action is a motion to approve this proposed settlement. Is there a motion?
I so move.
Motion made by Commissioner Urban, supported by Commissioner Hess. Any other discussion? All right, Clerk Barling, please call the roll.
Commissioner Hess.
Yes.
Commissioner Urban.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Griffin.
Yes.
Mayor Anderson.
Yes.
Commissioner Cunningham.
Yes.
Thank you, Commissioners. The motion passes. Next are reports and legislation. City Clerk Barling, do you have a report?
I do. I have a couple of items. The first one is something that was actually in the agenda packet, just by way of note that I had officially received the recommendation from the Environmental Concerns Committee regarding the city's sustainability plan. And I believe there might be a little more coming on that next. Then the other thing is I wanted to give an update on the election. 1 week from tomorrow is the election, if we can believe that. And I do have a PowerPoint here. I want to go through just some information, some deadlines, opportunities, and so forth. And let's see here. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Can everyone see that?
Looks good, Scott.
Okay. Let me. All right. So the first thing I want to do is give some statistical updates. The number of registered voters that we have here, 56,566. That's up about 1,500 voters from where we were at the August election. So that is something that is it's good to see. Let's see here. All right. Okay, sorry. So then next, I've been giving you reports about absentee ballots and how that's going and the number of absentee ballots issued. Currently, we have exceeded 20,000 absentee ballots issued, which is huge for us. We figured that we'd probably be in the 20,000 neighborhood when we were doing our planning. So this is kind of tracking where we thought it would. In terms of absentee ballots received, we're actually quite pleased that we have 70% back right now, 14,000, almost 14,400. So that is a good thing and something we're really excited to see. People are getting those ballots back, and we want to say, keep them coming. Okay, okay. In terms of some announcements, kind of what's coming this week, where are we? In person, there is absentee balloting and voter registration happening here at City Hall and at our branch location at the Bernhardt Center. And our office hours at both locations are 9 to 5 daily. Tomorrow, we will have the second of our evening hours where we'll be open till 9 p.m. tomorrow. And then on Saturday, we'll be open from 10 a.m. to 6 a.m. And that is the second Saturday we're offering. We're open this past Saturday as well. Now,
10 a.m. to 6 p.m., correct?
10 a.m. to 6 p.m., correct. Right. Yep. So something else that's going on, and this is highlighting a deadline. You can still get an absentee ballot by mail. We can put an absentee ballot in the mail for you, but we are coming up on a deadline, and that is Friday at 5 p.m. We have to have your request in by that time in order for us to put a ballot in the mail. And there's that yellow wording there because yellow is kind of a caution. We can put that ballot in the mail to you on Friday afternoon, but people do need to keep in mind the delivery parameters of the post office. I can say that we here haven't seen any sort of systemic issues with delays in mail delivery. The number of absentee ballots we've received back already kind of is a testament to that. But we are coming up on their normal delivery parameters here. So, I mean, we really are encouraging people now, if you can, come in person to get your absentee ballot. But this option for doing it by mail is good for those people who can't get to the clerk's office, who just that's the only way, there's no way they're going to be able to get here in person, we can get a ballot in the mail. And now, because we have options like the drop boxes in different locations, there are opportunities there for people to get their ballot by mail. Even if they got their ballot on election day in the mail, they could fill it out, bring it to City Hall, or take it to a drop box, put it in there before 8 p.m. and it would be counted. So this is an option, getting an absentee ballot by mail until the end of this week. But there's that caution there to keep in mind, just the mail service and what your expectations might be for that.
Clerk Barling, just a quick clarification here.
Sure.
I know there was some discussion about the fact that ballots could be received up into a date that was much extended past Election Day. That is not the case. Is that correct?
Correct. That's not the case. Where that came from was in September, the Michigan Court of Claims issued a decision stating that clerks had to accept ballots that were postmarked either next Monday, the day before the election, or prior, and we had to accept those ballots for up to 14 days after the election. A week and a half ago, the Michigan Court of Appeals struck that down and said no, what the law says, which is ballots have to be in the clerk's office by 8 p.m. on election day, that law stands. So the original deadline, the deadline that we've been using for years, that deadline is still in force now.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, and I want to go back and say those requests, absentee ballot requests, you can take a picture of the absentee ballot request form and email it to us. You can fax that form to us. You can go online to mi.gov/vote, log in, put in your information, and request your absentee ballot online. So those options are still available until the end of this week. All right. 1 second here. Yes. Okay. So that's this week. Moving on to next week now, election week. Both at the City Hall, and the Bernhardt Center, we have election activities going on. Voter registration will be available in the clerk's office Monday, a week from today. Our hours are going to be 9 to 4 p.m. that day. And then, as you know, new with Proposal 3, something that we've been enjoying all year is Election Day registration. So you can still register to vote on Election Day, and that will begin at 7 a.m. through 8 p.m., the same hours that the polls are open. Absentee voting, the last time to get an absentee ballot in person at the clerk's office for most voters is going to be 4 p.m. on Monday. So a week from today, 4 p.m., that's the last day you can get an absentee ballot in person. But I want to highlight, you can get an absentee ballot in person up until that time. So that's an opportunity there. People who register to vote in the clerk's office on Election Day will also be able to get an absentee ballot, but only that specific group of people, those who are registering to vote here on Election Day, they're the only ones who can get an absentee ballot, but that option will be available to them. And of course, on Election Day, we have in-person voting at all of our voting precincts. All 27 precincts will be open, and the hours are 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And with all of these different options, voting absentee, voting in person in your precinct on Election Day, we encourage people, make a plan. Go out now to michigan.gov or mi.gov/vote. Find your polling location information. Find out where you're registered to vote, request that absentee ballot if that's what you want to do, but make a plan. Don't don't wait until your alarm goes off next Tuesday and you hear the radio announcer say it's election day and you say, oh man, maybe I should do something about that. So make a plan and go ahead and execute that plan then.
Clerk Barling?
Yeah.
Excuse me. I want people to be aware too that some of the polling locations have shifted and changed.
Correct. Prior to the August election, there were 2 polling locations that changed. Precinct 6, which had voted at Friendship Village, is now voting at the K-RISA West Campus school building, which is actually just down the street from Friendship Village. And then precincts 1 and 3, which had voted at First United Methodist Church right across from Bronson Park here. They're now voting at Faith Temple Church of God. So those 2 changes were made, and those were made before the August election. But thank you for Commissioner Hess for pointing that out. Some reminders, just some of the hitting some of the deadlines again. In-person voter registration. If you're not registered to vote, you can get registered to vote up to 8 p.m. on election day. Absentee ballots by mail, 5 p.m. this Friday. We need to have your request in if you want us to put a ballot in the mail to you. And then absentee voting in person. The last time to get a ballot from my office is 4 p.m. next Monday, and returning those ballots, all absentee ballots, in order to be counted, need to be back in the clerk's office by 8 p.m. on election day. Some reminders about voter registration. At this point, the only way you can register to vote is in person at your local clerk's office. So that's wherever you reside. If you reside in the city of Kalamazoo, then that would be with us. If you reside in one of the townships, that would be with your township clerk. Another city of Portage, you'd be registering with that clerk. So that's where you need to go. And because we're less than 15 days prior to the election, you have to have proof of residency when you come and register to vote. You'll also be asked to show photo ID, but we all also want to remind people that if you don't have an ID, you can still register to vote. You can sign an affidavit and still register to vote. So you'll be asked for it, but if you don't have it, you can sign an affidavit. Absentee voting, again, it happens with your local clerk. You have to get your ballot and return your ballot to the clerk where you live. I want to take a second to highlight the fact that in Michigan, early voting is in-person absentee voting. We've had some people come to my office who want to be able to mark their ballot and put it in a tabulator. And that is true early voting. We don't have that in Michigan. I know a lot of people are using the phrase early voting, but early voting is really absentee voting, where even if you do it here in the clerk's office, if you come in tomorrow and do that, you're going to fill out your ballot. You're going to put it in an envelope, seal it up. That envelope is going to get put in a secure storage area, and it will be processed on election day. So I just wanted to clarify that, because we've had people come and sometimes they're a little upset because they were expecting one thing, and it's not what they expected. Again, photo ID for absentee voting in person in the clerk's office during this time. Photo ID will be, we'll ask you for it, but if you don't have it, you can sign an affidavit and still vote. A couple of little interesting points, maybe it falls in the category of FAQs. I want to encourage people, vote the ballot that was mailed to you. Something that we've seen is people coming in to vote, and when we look them up, we see that we've already sent them a ballot, and it seems like, I think they're thinking they're going to get something different when they come to City Hall compared to the ballot that was sent to them. But I want to make clear that the ballots were ordered all as one batch, and it's from that same batch of ballots that ballots were mailed to voters, that we have ballots here to issue to voters who come to City Hall, and it's that same batch of ballots that will go to the precincts on election day. So so I would encourage you, if you have an absentee ballot at home, go ahead and vote that ballot. It's not any different than the ballot that you would get here at City Hall. A second thing, vote the correct ballot. I think some people have ballots laying around. This is the 4th election we've run this year. You want to be voting the November 3rd ballot. We're getting ballots from the August election. We're getting people returning ballots from the March election. So I encourage you, make sure you are looking and seeing what election is at the top of the ballot, and make sure you're returning the November 3rd ballot. And then something that has been talked about quite a bit actually out in the news media, sign your ballot. Make sure your ballot is signed when you return it. And there's this question that a lot of people have, well, what signature are you using? In general, the signature that we're using for comparison is the signature that's on the voter's Michigan driver's license or state ID. That's a good general rule of thumb. That's the signature we're going to be using. So returning absentee ballots, the way you can do that, you can bring them here in person to the clerk's office. You can put them in one of the ballot drop boxes that we have around. You can also put them in the mail if you would like. Although, like I said, at this point, we're encouraging people, if you can, to bring them back in person or put them in a drop box. And the locations are there. In-person voting on election day, like I said, make a plan, check your registration status, check your polling location, go out to mi.gov/vote. We ask that you please wear a mask. We can't force people to wear a mask. We're not going to keep a person from voting because they're not wearing a mask. We can't send them away, but we're asking for the safety of our poll workers and the other voters there. Please wear a mask when you come. The other thing that you might want to consider is making a plan B. We're just within the last week or so, week or two, we're seeing a rising volume of positive COVID positive COVID tests. And we're starting to hear from people saying, my plan was to vote in person, but now I'm quarantined. And what do I do? And the answer for someone in that situation is call us and let us know, and we'll work with you and try to figure out a way to get you a ballot so you can vote it. But I guess I would urge people, think about that. Think about what happens if, think of a plan B, and if you're concerned about safety at the precinct, if you're concerned about, well, what happens if I'm not able to go to my precinct, then consider voting an absentee ballot. So yeah, it probably is a good idea for people to think about a plan B just in case. And I just want to end on this, because there are a lot of concerns out there right now about the process. There are a lot of concerns about things like safety, both talking about COVID-19, talking about the potential threats that have been discussed out in the media at polling locations, voter intimidation, voter suppression. Our commitment, our goal here is we want to increase people's confidence in the process and, of course, increase participation. But it's not enough for us just to try to get more people involved. We want people to have confidence in the process. So, our commitment is to maintaining safety for voters, whether they come here to City Hall or go to the polls, both in terms of their health with COVID-19 and in terms of keeping them safe from any sort of harm. And this goes to the next piece of ensuring access, both that safety and ensuring access. We're committed to make sure that when people go to the polls next Tuesday, that they're able to do so in a safe way, that they have access to the polls, that they're not intimidated. As Chief Coakley said, my office has been working with the city attorney and with public safety about these issues and talking about how we can address those to make sure that everyone is safe and everyone feels safe. And then in line, and kind of in line with what I've been doing here, the thing we've been really trying to do is educate people about their options. People have different comfort levels. Some people don't want to go vote in person on election day for multiple reasons. Some people don't want to cast an absentee ballot because they have concerns about that. Voters have different comfort levels, and something we're really trying to do is offer them whatever options are available so that they can cast their vote in a way that's comfortable for them. Again, we want people to be confident in the process, and we want people to participate. So that's what I have for a presentation. I'll any questions, I can answer those, hopefully.
Any questions for Clerk Barling? I don't see any, Clerk Barling. I just want to say that your commitment, to increasing confidence and participation is totally evident. I really want to pass along, it seems like I'm doing this a lot tonight. I guess work with a great crew here, but pass along my thanks and all of our thanks to your core team and all the expanded team that you bring in to accomplish these efforts. So it is entirely evident that your mission statement here is to make sure that people can be confident that their vote will be counted and that they can be safely, take advantage of what is offered to them in terms of voting this democracy. So thank you so much. Vote early. That's what I will suggest to people. A couple events, I think that was in March when a lot of people came down, and I ended up helping you that evening down at City Hall. And a lot of folks came in to register and vote late on voting day. And I'll just suggest that although that is certainly available, that's probably not the first choice of way to go about it. So if you want to, take advantage of your opportunity to vote, got another number of days here to do that. You're available and ready to help. So long presentation, but it's about something that is so valuable that we get to exercise here in this country. So thank you, Clerk Barling, for your devotion. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
City Manager Ritzma, any other reports?
Yes, Your Honor. We have one report this evening. As Clerk Barling mentioned earlier, there is a recommendation from the Environmental Concerns Committee regarding a sustainability plan for the city of Kalamazoo. And I have Jamie McCarthy, who is our Sustainable Development Coordinator, as well as members of the Environmental Concerns Committee here. And I'll turn it over to Jamie.
Hi, well, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and Commissioners. We're going to start off with comments by the ECC Chair. We have Mr. Aaron Wright with us, and then I'll give a brief update about where we are with sustainability planning at the city, and then we're going to let Dr. Denise Keel at Western Michigan University speak on behalf of the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition network of climate advocates from our area, kind of wrap up and give us sort of the pulse and feeling of the community on climate change. So Chair Wright, if you want to start off.
Yeah, thanks. Can everybody hear me? Awesome. Thanks so much for allowing me to take up some more of your time tonight. I believe in your packets, you've got the ECC's recommendation that we sent a few months ago regarding the climate action plan, sustainability plan. So in addition to that recommendation, I would like to take the opportunity to remind the commissioners that it's been almost 1 full year since the unanimous approval of a climate emergency declaration. Of course, the climate emergency has not abated in this last year. It only continues to get worse. We need action now. So to put some meat on the bones of the ECC's recommendations, the ECC is eager to see the city purchase and use the ICLEI data collection protocols So ICLEI is the International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, and to my knowledge is the gold standard for collecting and analyzing greenhouse gas emission data. I understand that that is actually happening right now, so that is a fantastic development. The ECC is also eager to see the city provide full-time staff to plan, implement, and monitor this effort. A piecemeal approach, and the ECC's role in this is once the city, Jamie and other staff members get a plan together, they'll kind of come present to the ECC and we'll be able to give some feedback and some input. A piecemeal approach to data collection and staffing will not be considered sufficient by the ECC. While there are likely to be costs associated with this effort, the long-term economic trade-off is more than worth it. From the increase in intensity of storms causing flooding downtown and in the Lakewood neighborhood, to an increase in temperature swings leading to widespread closures during winter, the economic impacts of climate change are real. Finally, as a community, we have the political will to put a plan in place and to be regional leaders in this effort. Many local communities have passed similar climate emergency declarations, but have not acted on them in any significant way. We have the opportunity and the responsibility to step into this void as the local leader in planning and implementation. It will take a regional, state, national, and global response to slow rising average temperatures. And there are plenty of regional stakeholders willing to take on that work, but we must make a coordinated effort and collaborate with our local partners. The ECC is eager to see the city of Kalamazoo step up to this challenge. So thanks very much to the dedicated staff who have been working on this so far. And thank you, Mayor and Commissioners, for your time this evening.
Thank you very much, Chair Aaron Wright. Appreciate seeing you again. Is this back to you, Mrs. McCarthy, or is this to Dr. Denise Keel?
I'm going to give an update to the board and to the public about where we're at right now. So first, I'd like to thank Chair Wright and the ECC for their commitment to both climate change and the sustainability planning efforts, and recognize again their contribution as that advisory committee to the Community Planning and Economic Development Department as we sort of have pulled the planning piece to this project. And while the CPED department has been working with the ECC and others over the past year to advance our planning efforts, I really appreciate their concerns expressed in their letter when the shutdown occurred in March due to COVID pandemic. Certainly our planning efforts were paused for some time. And so I wanted to give an update, where are we at now in October 2020? In September, we held the rest of our focus groups, which had been interrupted earlier in March, and these centered on listening to some of the challenges and solutions from different sectors across the community. And most recently, as Chair Wright mentioned, that the city has renewed our ICLEI membership, and we just recently participated in an orientation and planning session with ICLEI staff to work toward updating our greenhouse gas emissions inventory for Kalamazoo. We have, using the same ICLEI protocols, we have a 2009 and a 2013 inventory, and now we want to look at data from 2019 and make that comparison to where we're at now. And we know that it will probably take us the rest of this year to collect and analyze city and community-wide data necessary for the plan. And working with ICLEI, they felt like, sort of using some of their protocols and some of the tools that they have, that something by the end of the year would be reasonable for us to attain. And then we'll take this information and that'll help us create some of those draft elements of the sustainability strategy. We're definitely going to have to work and vet those through our city departments, and then bringing those to the ECC for their input and feedback, likely targeting right at the beginning of 2021. So when might the commission see a plan for your approval? In early 2021, we know we're also going to need to spend some time getting back out with the community, right? Talking to our neighborhood leaders, local businesses, institutions, our public utilities, and nonprofits to make sure that we're proposing a plan that has broad support, that really makes sense for the conditions here in Kalamazoo, and then ultimately that we have partners who are committed to helping us implement actions within that plan. And we know that's going to probably set us up for the most success when we move into implementation. And so as we work through that process, kind of depending on how that goes in early 2021, we anticipate, and it's our goal, to bring a plan forward to the commission in early spring of 2021. With that, I would hand it off to Dr. Denise Keel.
Oh, good evening, everyone. Thank you for that update, Chair Wright. And Jamie, thank you for your continued and renewed effort on this topic. I'm just really glad to be here with all of you tonight. Again, I'm here tonight in my role as the coordinating committee chair of the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition, and to urge you to continue to develop and implement a climate action plan. We recognize that a climate emergency threatens citizens in the natural world, and that was just the first step, right, of admitting, of telling the truth about the urgent need to act differently and prioritize climate action. That was a hard but crucial first step, but we did that together, just like we are tonight. City staff, the Environmental Concerns Committee, community, commissioners took that step together, and now it's time to honor that commitment and take the next step. Last year's climate emergency declaration did not spell out specific actions because it was intended to further catalyze this exact type of support and work together. And indeed, we continue to see broad and sustained, even increasing public support in the community, and the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition remains focused on supporting the implementation of this climate action plan. This is going to be accomplished in the near term by the specific actions that Chair Wright recommends: integration of climate action into planning, budgeting, staffing, and a data-driven process. Long-term, this will be accomplished by prioritizing climate goals within every sector of city management and making and securing those regional and state partnerships. This is difficult work, and we are sensitive to the many issues: economic growth, public safety, public health, and housing that compete for your time and attention, and the seeming tensions among those issues that can make governance and leadership complicated. However, rather than separate, we can instead understand these issues as interrelated and recognize that climate change will affect the success of every other single policy we wish to pass. It will impact the basic goals of all citizens of Kalamazoo. The effects of climate change are being felt right now by traditionally marginalized people in our community, and inaction on climate leaves our most vulnerable at risk. Climate action planning offers us a holistic lens through which to address multiple threats with unified policies. Finally, the time is now. The urgent actions necessary to address the climate crisis will only get harder the longer we wait. Planning options will narrow as we experience impacts and effects that diminish our ability to respond effectively. Many of the citizens who spoke out in support of the passage of the climate emergency declaration were youth, and their voices are really powerful in clearly articulating their fears for a future that maybe some of us who are older have started to take for granted. Our present and their future depends on the actions we continue to take together right now to develop and implement a climate action plan. We ask this commission and our staff and our ECC to continue to work with the Kalamazoo Climate Coalition to develop such a plan, because as the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition believes, action begets hope, and that together we can collectively reimagine society. Thank you for your time tonight. On behalf of the Kalamazoo Climate Crisis Coalition, we appreciate speaking with you.
Thank you, Dr. Keel. Anything else, Ms. McCarthy? All right, thank you. I appreciate everyone's words tonight and passion and urging. So thank you for that. I feel a little bit like we've been tumbling underwater here for a little while, and maybe we're beginning to see where we can get our head to the top and start getting back to some of this crucial work that seems like it's somehow got away from us here a few months ago. So thank you for that very, very much. City Manager Ritzma, anything else? I'm sorry, Commissioner Cunningham.
I'm not sure who would probably be best to equipped to try and answer this question, but what are the statuses of some of the surrounding municipalities as it pertains to this initiative?
Dr. Keel has been working with and talking to other municipalities, so maybe she wants to jump in here. I know last year when approaching this city commission with the climate emergency resolution, they were also talking with other municipalities. Dr. Keel, do you want to?
Sure. So locally, I just accepted a role on the green team for the township. So I hope that we can coordinate township and city efforts. I'm a township resident. And I know that the county budget also included a line item to continue climate action planning and that resolution. So, you know, these are the actual implementation steps that we need. And so if we broaden that out a little bit, probably right now, the biggest example is Ann Arbor. Passing a carbon neutrality goal of 2030 and a very detailed climate action plan. I think that's probably going to be a model that we can look to. You know, we don't need to compare ourselves, but there are definitely some work that was done that we can also utilize. The big news is, of course, the state of Michigan. Governor Whitmer just issued some directives that are going to help us do these things. And one of the big things that I know Jamie has probably already applied for is to be a catalyst community. So we hope that there's going to be a lot of other state support to continue this action throughout cities. The other big example is probably Marquette and Oakland County working on their climate action plans right now.
Well, I'm thinking more locally because there's multiple governments that even surround the city. And I know oftentimes we're looked at to take the lead on a lot of these initiatives. And I think that even with this one, we should. But I guess the thought that I just want to put out there, and I know Mr. Wright, you look like you want to say a few words, but the thought that I just want to put out there is that I think that all of the surrounding municipalities within the county should be having this exact same conversation. And if there's some cross intentionality, then we need to figure out what that looks like and how we can, you know, amplify our voice on a state level through that partnership.
Yeah, Commissioner Cunningham, there has been, you know, most of the municipalities, I think, have passed some kind of climate action resolution, but there's not been very much action. All this stuff is new. And so it's not like you can just go find somebody to figure out how to collect all this data and figure out what to do with it and figure out where you can, you know, make reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. With the city plugging into the ICLEI system, there's already a county kind of county-wide working group, folks that meet relatively regular. I think it's once a month, isn't it, Dr. Keel? And so there's already kind of a framework, a group that can get together and start that regional conversation, at least with the municipalities. But we also need to look at businesses, you know, power consumers' power, all that kind of stuff. So that, you know, that's what we're hoping for.
Any other questions? Commissioner Hess.
Commissioner Cunningham, I agree. It's got to be all of us and not just the county. I'm glad the governor put out her directive. Coming from Kalamazoo College, where we signed the president's climate commitment, you know, to be carbon neutral. I'm familiar with everything that has to happen on down to the individual level, but what you're talking about is awareness by our citizens, but also by our city staff and by the people that are working together on creating this plan. Awareness and then education, education of all. And at Western Michigan, I know we're doing great things over there with educating about climate and all of the things that we have to do to become carbon neutral. I know K is involved. I know KVCC is involved. So our big three institutions are on board. And so we continue to educate on down through KC Ready Fours, where children begin to understand themselves as a part of this. climate. And if Chris Pradle were here, I'll speak for Chris because he votes. We're not voting here, but like when it does come time to vote, he votes for his children. I'm saying I'm going to vote for my grandchildren. I want my grandchildren to have grandchildren. And if they want to have them in Kalamazoo, we have to do this. We have to do this. It's necessary. It is an emergency, and we have to continue to work on it on a regular basis. So thank you, Dr. Keel. Thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Jamie, for doing the work that you're doing.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Vice Mayor Griffin.
Thank you. Thank you all for your efforts. Just a quick question. I know COVID has sent us all on a path that we didn't expect. And I know that there's some community engagement that you are planning on doing, but I'm wondering if you all are planning on adjusting, should you not be able to meet in person, to have some electronic input sessions or a way that community can input electronically as a way to not slow the process up, because community input is so important, but we have to absolutely get this done. I just wondered if there was any conversation or any plans to move forward electronically.
Yeah, Vice Mayor, we held the remaining focus groups virtually, and we're able to do that fairly successfully, I'd say, in September. I think that moving forward with some of the additional groups we're going to have to get together, some of those community partners, nonprofits and such, that we'll probably hold those in a similar fashion. And I think that works really well. I think when it comes to engaging our neighborhoods and our residents, we'll have to evaluate when it comes time in January and February. But if we had an opportunity to have some sort of mix of virtual and some sort of socially distanced in-person option, I know our department would like that. We're certainly feeling the impacts of having to try to do this virtual engagement, and we don't want to leave people behind. But we had also been talking about sort of earlier this summer, not anticipating that COVID would maybe have the lasting effects that it has, about different ways, different programs or sort of fellowship type opportunities, working with Director Dora LeBonner, in how we can get out to our communities. And maybe it's one of our first steps in implementation is, kind of fostering and educating individuals who can go out and work with their neighbors and start talking about, what is climate change. We can start by talking about what is energy justice and what are ways to keep energy bills low for all people throughout our community. So some of this might shift into our first steps of implementation and hoping that we can get out into the community when we can, but we'll certainly probably lean pretty heavily on virtual options until then. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? City Manager Ritzma, any other reports?
Nothing else, Your Honor, although I would like to thank everyone for the well wishes and thoughts and support expressed during my COVID period. And I can just say that it's very real, and people are asked to wear masks, and that will help a lot. So I hope we can do that and help protect each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Manager Ritzma. I'm so happy that you are back and you're healthy, and I believe your family is in a similar situation, so that's great. Yes, sir. At this point, we will hear from commissioners who wish to make comments. Commissioner Urban.
Yes, Mayor Anderson. I want to just take this opportunity to remind people as they are preparing to vote, if they haven't already, that the Housing for All millage proposal is on the back side of the ballot. So often we get hung up on the presidential race and the things that go on in the front, but turn that ballot over, and before you turn it in, look at the last item on the back page. It has to do with a Housing for All millage, which would cost the average homeowner in Kalamazoo about $37 a year. So when you think about the great need we have for affordable and safe housing, this is something that is going to be a county-wide proposal. So it's going to be serving the whole county, not just the city. I hope that we'll do our part to put that, make that a reality. So that's just my little plug right there. And I'll stop with that, except for one other thing. I was very moved by what Dr. Keel said, the way she expressed herself. It takes passion to get the energy up to do this work. It's so easy, especially for somebody my age who has been used to wasting energy and everything else for a lifetime, to really get serious about this. But our children and our grandchildren depend on what we do now. So thanks to you, Dr. Keel, for your passion and your commitment and your efforts. Keep it up.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner Urban. Commissioner Hess.
Just a few things. Again, a welcome back to City Manager Ritzma, and a kudos to all the deputy city managers who stepped in and filled some jobs. Lamb, Moore, and Chamberlain, thank you so much for all you do. And for those of you who are out there, these folks do a tremendous amount daily behind the scenes on behalf of all of us. So I'm really glad that you're back with us, Jim, and your family. Sustainability is something that we have to do. And I don't know if any of us here on the commission would disagree with that. I don't think anybody in the city staff would disagree with that. Perhaps we will discuss about how that looks and how we do it, because it comes with a dollar. But I mean, I was able to tour the Creamery project, and it because it is a LEED certified platinum, the highest LEED certification, the most sustainable kind of building that we can have, that should be a standard. It should be a standard for the way that we build our buildings and live these days. So kudos to all the folks at the Y and all of the architects and builders that are working on that project. It's gorgeous. I mean, we get a lot of emails and questions and calls, and we end up really trying to make sure they get to the right people at the city. But I want to reiterate something that came out in February, the 311, to call 311 if you want to talk to anyone at the city. Just call 311 if you're a resident of the city. Somebody will get you to the person you need to talk to. And in these times, I think it's really important that we have someone to talk to. I was able to attend, and I'm sure Vice Mayor Griffin will say something about this, and Commissioner Cunningham as well. And David, you were there too, on Saturday at the unveiling of the mural for the gun violence memorial. My heart breaks that we actually have to memorialize victims of gun violence, but we're doing it. And so it has to be a community conversation in how to heal it. And I'm really proud of Kalamazoo for now creating that conversation. So thanks to everyone that's involved with that. And shout out to Nicole Lee, who was spearheading this beautiful piece of art. So I hope that the entire community has a chance to see that. And then just lastly, Halloween, nothing's been mentioned, and we get a lot of calls about that, but I do believe it's an individual neighborhood kind of thing. And from my perspective, there are county guidelines for us to make sure that we do it safely, that we keep distance, and everyone wears a mask and not just a Dracula mask. So that's it.
Thank you, Commissioner Hess. Commissioner Cunningham.
Get out, vote, please vote. It's very important. It's actually that exact same event that Mayor Anderson, Vice Mayor Griffin, and Commissioner Hess was at. I spoke to an individual who stated, I asked him, I said, make sure you get out to vote. He said, I would only vote if you were on the ballot. And I appreciate that. I appreciate the love that he showed for me, but I just want to explain to you guys kind of that hierarchy and why it's important. I get to make legislation with my colleagues here on the city commission, but my powers are limited, and I can only work within the confinements of our state and federal laws. And so oftentimes I need people in those positions to assist me with some of the things that we need right here in Kalamazoo. So it is very imperative and important that we get out to vote. Even if you don't like, I know quite often, even for myself, when we talk about presidency, it's picking between the two evils. But I will be remiss if I didn't state that it is imperative to get Vice President Biden into office. I think that, his leadership will impact us, whether we like it or not. And anything, well, our alternative, I think, could be very detrimental. So please get out to vote. There are a lot of different things that are on the ballot. Please write in Stephanie Moore for state rep. Vote John Holy. And make sure, once again, you get out to vote. Also, if you have a felony, you can vote. If you want to find out where your precinct is, it's michigan.gov/vote. I won't try and run down everything based on what our clerk Barling put forth, but I can't stress enough the importance of getting out to vote. Go vote. Not only do you vote, but make sure that the people around you are going to vote. Hold them by their hand, take them to the poll, take your children to the poll so that they learn this process. These are simple things that I feel are our civil duty, and it'll make it easier process for our youth if they can be a part of that hands-on. So once again, get out to vote. Please stay safe. COVID is real. And so I look forward to the journey.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Cunningham. Vice Mayor Griffin.
Thank you. So what all of my colleagues have lifted up. Also, just reiterating, thank you to the Department of Public Safety and to our clerk's office for really being focused on safety around this election. I think it's amazing that we have more people registered to vote, but we know we're in these times where even if the pressure is not coming from our direct community, conversations and comments that are made will impact our community. And so I'm thankful that this is being taken seriously, proactively. So I just wanted to lift that up. And as well, along with voting, make sure you get a voting plan. I'm excited as my daughter, it's her first year being able to vote. So we've talked about our plan for that. And as has been lifted up, you can vote if you have a felony. If you don't have a driver's license, you can go in and vote. Just this last election, I didn't have my license and I was like, darn, oh, wait a minute, yes, I can. And I did it and I didn't have any problems. So I just want to lift that up as well. There's little to no excuse if you are able to vote to not vote. And if you need information, go to vote411.org. Some of my colleagues have just lifted up things that are on the ballot, people that are on the ballot. There's so much more. From school boards to library boards to judges, please get informed if you're not already and have not already voted. Again, that's vote411.org. I also want to thank all of the artists and from the Kalamazoo Black Artists Initiative, all of the organizers, and everyone who had a part to play in the walk and the mural that took place for gun violence. As has been lifted up, gun violence is not a singular issue of any particular side of town, of any particular group, or anything like that. It's not a city issue. It is a community issue. And it is going to take a community to address the issue. And that is absolutely who came out and came together for this art mural and for this walk. This is exactly what we're going to need to continue to take place. I want to thank everyone who's been on the ground, really working to dig into community. There's so many different contributing factors that go into this. And so when we all put our hands on deck, and that's, the city of Kalamazoo, the township, the, Portage, all of the outlying areas, similar to our environmental issues, this is the same thing. So we're going to need all hands on deck. And thank you for those who are already leading in those efforts. And thank you. I'm glad that you're back, Jim, and that your family's safe. And a reminder to everyone to just be mindful. You may have already had it. You may not have had it. You may feel that you're not susceptible to it, but other people are. So just be mindful of others and take care.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor Griffin. I can't say how much I appreciate working with all of you. A lot of work to do, and there couldn't be a better crew to do it together with. So thank you. Also, I wanted to recognize that Commissioner Pradel was at the event we all attended as well, related to gun violence, and also just pass along that Commissioner Knott and Commissioner Pradel, I'm sure both would have preferred to be here tonight. As everyone knows, we adjusted our schedule, and there was some pressing, very pressing work and family issues that came up, and so they were unable to be here, but I know that they were hoping to be here. So I want to thank them for their good work. So we have a theme tonight, and I just want to close out. I wanted to quote actually a president from an earlier time. This was actually in 1864, and I want to read a quote from a president at that time, and it's from President Abraham Lincoln. He says, "We cannot have free government without elections." And he said, "And if the rebellion could force us to forego or postpone a national election, it might fairly claim to have conquered and ruined us." And I want to remind folks that when he said that, he actually had supporters that were proposing to him that he postpone the election. And if you're going to evaluate it and think about 1864 and now, there are 11 states that had actually seceded from the Union at that time. There were armed mobs that had attacked Army recruiting offices. And actually, there had been a raid on Washington that got within 5 miles of the White House. He certainly had a series of good reasons to say, maybe we should postpone this election. And as a matter of fact, the way things were looking, and you look at some of his writings, he was convinced that he would probably lose in 1864. But even though supporters of his said this is just not a good time to do this, he pushed back and said, no, it's what we must do. This is a value that is so crucial to what we believe in that we must do it. So here we are now. And it's another time when people are feeling some fear and some concern and some worry. And I believe that it is a time for us to be strong. It is time for us to be resilient. It's in time for us to step up and act on our responsibility in a fearless way. And we have a lot of ways to do that now. All the work that our good clerk has done. So I'm supporting all the comments that were made tonight about the importance of voting. And I believe that it is just so profoundly important that every one of us take advantage of this opportunity. We can change the world. Lastly, I just want to remind everybody in Kalamazoo to keep their hearts open. I love you, Kalamazoo. We're adjourned.